Welcome back to Punk Rock Theologian. Today we've made it to number 3 of the 10 Commandments, and this one is going to be a little bit different than you might expect, because I don't see this commandment the way we usually talk about it. Let's jump right in. Exodus 20:7 and Deuteronomy 5:11. Both say the exact same thing. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. This instruction has long been seen as a guideline for when and how to say God's name, which is why my Bible school song said, number 3, God's name should be never spoken in jest. Well, you can label me a heretic if you need to, but I just don't see it that way. I believe that when we make this commandment all about saying stuff like, oh my God, or Jesus Christ in a non-reverent way, then we actually water it down to less than it's about. Don't get me wrong, I fully believe that the name of God is important, and the best explanation I've ever heard from this was from my own pastor talking about, I wouldn't use like the name of my wife or my son to swear with. If I'm super upset, I don't use their name as an exclamation. Why would I do that to God? That's totally reasonable, but I think this command goes way beyond that. I just mentioned my wife. When we got married, she changed her name. She took my name. But if she was still out there living like she's single, doing whatever she wants to do with total disregard for me, I would definitely view that as taking my name in vain. It's like she didn't really mean it. It doesn't mean anything to her. And I'm convinced that God feels the same way about people who claim his name, but it doesn't change their lives. If you call yourself a Christian, if you say that you're following the God of the Bible, but your life looks exactly the same as it did before you started doing that, or it looks exactly like the people around you who don't make that claim, then I think God finds that very offensive. Let's face it, talk is cheap. You can say some of my earlier declarations, say that I follow God's plan, not my own, and Jesus is first in my life. I trust God's wisdom, not my own. I don't just listen to God's word, I do what it says. But if you're not actually turning around and living that out, if it's just talk and it doesn't actually show up in your life, that is downright insulting to him. I think this is the meaning of Galatians 5:25, saying, since we're living by the Spirit, let us follow the Spirit's leading in every part of our lives. It's not about like just give a little bit, or we'll maybe let him have an hour of Sunday morning or something, but it's, if you're going to follow, then follow. If you're going to do this, let's really do it. Let's get serious. Like 1 Corinthians 9:24. Don't you realize that in a race, everyone runs, but only one person gets the prize? So run to win. Approach this life like it's A, the only one you've got because it is, but also like you're living it for him. Because if we're claiming to live for him, then let's actually look like it and act like it. The Bible gives tons of guidelines for how life really works, how to make it work at its best, and how we should operate on this planet among each other. Frankly, most of us already know way more of it than we're actually doing in our day-to-day lives. We don't need more education, we just need to get serious about it. And I don't think that concept is all that foreign to us. It's not like it's an exclusively Christian thing. We get this in superhero movies. It's one of my favorite lines in Batman Begins.
It's not who I am underneath, but what I do that defines me.
Honestly, I've always been more of a Marvel fan than DC back when they were comic books, before they were movie studios. So let's take the same lesson out of Spider-Man.
We are who we choose to be. Now choose!
You gotta love that one. It's actually the villain who gets this idea. We are who we choose to be. And so that's why my declaration for this one is, I serve God's purposes, not my own. I give my very best in all I do. I'm working for God and he will reward me. It's exactly what it says in Colossians 3:23. Work willingly at whatever you do, as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people. That's what it should look like to take God's name, to call ourselves his children, his people. And I think it's pretty fair for him to be upset if someone tries to take his name completely in vain, without it making any difference in how they live their lives. If we're going to claim the label of Christian, then we need to serve God's purposes, not our own.